This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Hi there, how are you? I hope your day started off well, or if you're listening to this towards the end of your day, you've had a good day. Today's episode, well, it's a short bite where we focus more so on mental health, specifically mental health literacy, which, before researching into this topic, ahead of getting prepared for this podcast episode, I have to admit I didn't know a great deal about it. I certainly do now though, and really value the work that people like Paul Gorczynski do in the field. It's so important to get the right information and evidence-based information out to people about mental health and well-being. I hope you go on to enjoy this episode where Paul shares his wisdom and some fascinating insights into helping decision makers in organisations, in clubs, in teams, be that in a sporting context or in other industries. In terms of mental health literacy, obviously you've done a lot of research in this field. Am I right? This is about obtaining, understanding, and like the use of the basic information. Is that generally the gist of mental health literacy?
For some individuals, I think that's kind of where it starts and where it ends. And I think sometimes some of the criticism that exists around mental health literacy is that it's just rooted in this kind of information. But that's a very complicated process. Mental health literacy has its history within health literacy, and it's kind of going back to people being able to read and understand prescriptions or simple pamphlets in order to change their health behaviors. But mental health literacy is evolving, and I would say evolving very quickly in terms of how individuals are able to find information, how they are able to process information, how they are able to understand information, how they are able to use it. And it not only is associated with seeking support, but it's also about challenging self and public stigma around mental health, how we feel and how others may feel about individuals living with mental health symptoms and disorders. But it's also quite strongly nowadays tied with organizational health literacy. So what are organizations doing to be able to provide information around health, or specifically in this instance, mental health? To ease that process of not only finding, using information to change health behaviors or to seek out services. And organizations have a tremendous responsibility in simplifying that process. And so mental health literacy traditionally evolved in that kind of manner that followed very, very closely to health literacy. And it was about kind of finding, using information, challenging stigma, helping with help seeking, but it's evolving. It's evolving to take on the need to understand various cultures and the context that people find themselves in, how individuals use that information, how is the organization structured, what services and support mechanisms are actually available. It's all fine and dandy to offer individuals information, but if it stops there, people don't have access to mental health services, or the wait lists are too long, or there's just literally nothing available. I mean, it becomes quite useless at that point. Frustrating, if anything. But it's evolving, and it's evolving rather quickly. There's a lot of work that's being done in the area to see how it can be improved, and I think a lot of organizations are taking it more seriously than perhaps maybe in the past.
So what advice would you offer for people who are decision makers in organizations there who've got this on their agenda?
Who have mental health literacy on the agenda?
Yeah.
Well, I think what is important is to really understand the kinds of organizations we're talking about. So how does this fit in with something like their overall values or their mission or the overall goals of the organization? So if we're talking about, say, maybe a league or a sporting organization, then I think it's important to understand that becoming literate in And mental health is not something that happens overnight. This is a process. And that training really needs to start early, certainly at a young age appropriate, language appropriate, stage of development appropriate. Needs to be ongoing. It's not something that is just done once. It needs to be revisited constantly. And both, there needs to be a concerted effort to help individuals find information, use that information, but situate it somewhere. So I think with anything, that organization has to take a look at within itself. How does it actually organize strategies for information processing? How does it actually offer opportunities to seek support? What is in itself doing to challenge mental stigma that exists within the organization? What kinds of other challenges exist that may threaten individuals' mental health? So it's, in a sense, something that needs to be taken into a broader SWOT analysis of that organization. And that mental health literacy is something that needs to be designed collectively for all individuals within an organization. It's not just enough to say, maybe focus on the athletes, or perhaps maybe a coaching staff, or some select few, but overall everyone becomes more literate within mental health. But it starts with a good understanding of what kind of organization we're talking about, exactly what are its goals, values, what's the context like, what's the history like, what are some prior challenges that perhaps maybe we are working with, to understanding the organization and moving from there.
Yeah, certainly for any clubs and organizations out there who haven't really delved into this area too much, it sounds like actually that there's a full-time job there for someone quite easily if you're going to do it at a really professional level.
Yeah, but I think that goes back to the values and goals of the organization. Why is this important? What do they want? Do they know how to direct people to seek support? Are they interested in ultimately shifting the culture of the organization as well? And if not, then I think everything can be tapered back with an appropriate action plan that takes into consideration the resources that an organization does have available. Because you're right, it can be something like a full-time job of looking after the mental health of an organization, or you can perhaps outsource that. And so it's really understanding the organization, its resources, and ultimately what they wish to do.
It was great to hear Paul's wisdom again and his advice around mental health literacy. And it really does emphasise the breadth of our work as a sports psychologist. A lot of people assume that our work is doing one-to-one support with athletes, or maybe presenting some group educational workshops where performance enhancement is what we're looking for. And that often is the case. However, we can be pigeonholed into those types of roles too. Yet, sport and exercise psychology can offer a lot more for the practitioner and for our clients. We can offer a holistic approach, which isn't just all about performance and mental skills training. In this case, Paul emphasises the point about the toolkit that we have available and the importance of mental health and well-being. Yes, there are some very, very successful sports psychologists who solely focus on sport, but there are also some very successful sports psychologists like Paul who go into organisations and consult to help organisations put the right processes in place, taking into account company values and company needs, so that employees, and if it's in sporting organisations, athletes, players, sports science staff, coaches, begin to value and learn more about mental health and integrate it into their everyday work. There's a lot of fear around this. People don't know what to say or what not to say. So this work is so important. And it's not just the role of a clinical or counselling psychologist or occupational therapist or perhaps an HR consultant. As a sport and exercise psychologist, we do have a lot to offer in this regards too. And as we know, performance will suffer if mental health suffers too. And that's for one person or as a culture. So it is so important and vital for us to look to build cultures in organisations, in clubs, where mental health is respected and where it's talked about openly. And this is something I'm very, very passionate about. Hence why I've decided to share a short bite on this topic. And if you want to go back to Paul's full episode, it was episode 158. The details are in the show notes, as well as some information in the Mental Edge, a regular newsletter that I go on to share to help individuals, to help teams, coaches, decision makers with the aim of enhancing performance and, obviously in this case, improving well-being and mental health. Please do feel free to sign up. Enjoy your day. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.